Mr Deputy President. And I'm very proud to be part of a coalition that takes a balanced view on all of these issues. On issues to go with water and the environment, I believe the coalition has a history and record of approaching the issues in a balanced way that recognises that there are a number of trade-offs from time to time between environmental concerns, between the need to support local communities and jobs, the need to maintain families on farms, and the need to maintain our access to cheap and affordable food, something that we've always benefited from, except for the very early times of the first settlers that they nearly starved to death. But we are lucky in this nation. We are lucky in this nation to have that access, and that requires taking a balanced approach to this. And that approach, I think we should agree, should be based on the national interest, not on particular parochial interests of any individual state or any individual region. It should be the Murray-Darling Basin Plan should be a process which is about managing the Murray-Darling for the entire nation, not for individual regions. And sometimes when individual senators want to speak only about the concerns in their own area of the country, that is the very process, the very type of behaviour that caused us to be in the problems we've got in the Murray-Darling in the first place. The reason we've had to take the kind of actions and major policy departures from what we were at before in the Murray-Darling is because individual states managed the system separate from each other and did not work together and coordinate. So I want to see a process that manages this system as a nation. I want to see a process that doesn't set Queenslanders against South Australians, New South Wales against Victorians, or indeed environmentalists against farmers too. Because I think the problem with the Labor Party is they have no balance in this area. They have no balance. They believe, or many of them, some of them believe, that every farmer is an environmental bandit, that every farmer wakes up in the morning trying to work out how they could destroy and despoil the wonderful environment we all enjoy here in this country. And nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth, because it's our farmers and our farming communities that live in this environment. They're the ones that live on the river. They're the ones that rely on the river flowing all the time, and they are the ones that have the greatest interest of any in our nation to make sure the river remains healthy. And there's a great degree of vitriol and insinuation about the new Minister for Water Resources, Barnaby Joyce. But one thing you can say is that he has actually lived on the Murray-Darling. He used to live on the Balonne River right in St George. He now lives in New England, also in the Gwydir catchment in the Murray-Darling Basin. He understands the system, and also he was Shadow Minister for Water for more than 3 years. He was Shadow Minister for Water during the time when the Murray-Darling Basin Plan was agreed to, and it had to be agreed to by both parties to get through this chamber. It was a disallowable instrument, and it could have been disallowed by either side of this chamber, but it was supported. It was supported by the coalition government, put forward by the Labor Party, supported with Barnaby Joyce as a Shadow Minister for Water. So I am sure he, more than anyone else in the coalition, will make sure it's seen to its fruition. Because when the Labor Party started out on this process, though, when they were in government, they did get it wrong. They got it wrong terribly. Initially in 2010, when they released a Murray-Darling Basin Plan calling for 6,700 gigalitres to be reduced in usage in the basin, which caused great consternation and was incredibly unbalanced approach. And even they would admit that now, that they eventually implemented a plan that called for a reduction of 2,750 gigalitres, more than half less what the initial position was. That was a much more sensible process. That was a much more sensible plan. Our job now is to make sure we implement water reform, implementing a triple bottom line, implementing it in a way which protects the environment, absolutely, but also protects farming communities and their jobs, and also protects our ability to grow food and create wealth for our nation. And many of the issues now that go to the implementation of the plan go to very detailed considerations in those catchments and in those areas. And just recently, we had a Senate committee in one of these catchments in St George, the most important irrigation community in Queensland in the Murray-Darling system. And those complex details were very stark, and unfortunately, Mr Deputy President, there were no representatives from the Labor Party or the Greens at those hearings to hear those things in detail. But those are the kinds of issues and complexities which will be dealt considerably better, I think, with an agricultural minister in charge of water going forward.